She had 7 coins, a faded dress, and a secret she was forbidden to reveal. Then a billionaire arrived at her village and said, "My father left your name in his final letter." Amina thought he had come to change her life. She was wrong. He had come because her family had been robbed of a fortune, and the truth could destroy his own. But why would a billionaire risk everything for a poor village girl? And what secret had her mother hidden for 20 years? Stay until the end, because the truth will change everything you thought you knew. On the night Amina Kato married the wealthiest man in the country, she owned only 3 things: a faded blue dress, 7 coins hidden beneath her mattress, and a secret she had sworn to take to her grave. She never imagined that this secret would become the reason a billionaire would one day kneel before her, not to propose, but to demand the truth. Yet 3 months earlier, Amina was simply a poor village girl selling roasted maize beside a dusty road, unaware that a black luxury car was about to alter the course of her life forever. Rain pounded the tin roofs of Kijani village as Amina hurried home, an empty basket balanced against her hip. Her sandals were soaked, her dress clung to her knees, and her stomach growled loudly enough to make her laugh. "Even my stomach has become impatient," she muttered. At the edge of the village, she stopped abruptly when she noticed an enormous black car parked outside her small mud brick house. No one in Kijani owned a vehicle like that. Amina studied it with suspicion. "Either someone very important is visiting," she whispered, "or I have suddenly become rich and forgotten about it." The driver's door opened. A tall man in a dark suit stepped out into the rain, followed by 2 security guards. Then the rear door opened, and a man emerged who looked entirely out of place beneath the village's gray sky. Daniel Hartwell, 34, billionaire businessman, owner of Hartwell Industries, and one of the most widely recognized men in the country, stood before Amina with an expression she could not decipher. He looked at her as though he had seen a ghost. "Are you Amina Kato?" he asked. Amina tightened her grip on the basket. "That depends on who is asking." The billionaire almost smiled. "My name is Daniel Hartwell." She looked him up and down. "And what exactly does a man who owns half the city want with a woman who cannot afford cooking oil?" Daniel's smile faded. He reached inside his coat and withdrew an old photograph. It showed a young woman standing beside a little girl, Amina's mother and Amina herself, taken nearly 20 years earlier. On the back of the photograph was a symbol Amina had seen only once before, hidden inside her mother's old wooden box. Daniel noticed the change in her expression. "Where did you get that symbol?" he asked quietly. Amina's heart began to pound. She remembered her mother's final warning, "Never let anyone from the Hartwell family find you." Before she could respond, thunder rolled across the village. Daniel stepped closer and lowered his voice. "Amina, I didn't come here to harm you. I came because my father died yesterday, and in his final letter, he wrote your name." Amina stared at him, suddenly realizing that the billionaire standing before her might hold the key to the secret her mother had spent her entire life trying to conceal. Amina did not invite Daniel inside. She simply stood beneath the leaking roof of her doorway, staring at him as rainwater dripped from her hair onto the dusty floor. "My name?" she repeated. "Your father wrote my name." Daniel nodded and handed her a sealed envelope. The paper was old, but the red wax bearing the Hartwell family crest was unmistakable. Amina reached for it, then stopped. "How do I know this isn't some trick?" Daniel looked at her for several seconds. "You don't." His voice was calm. "But if it is a trick, I came a very long way to be insulted by a woman holding a basket of maize." Amina glanced at the empty basket. "The basket is innocent." For the first time that evening, Daniel laughed. Inside the small house, Amina placed the letter on the wooden table but refused to open it. Her mother, Miriam, had always warned her about the Hartwells. Some families carry wealth, she used to say. Others carry dangerous secrets. Amina had never understood what she meant. Miriam had died 2 years earlier, taking most of those secrets with her. Finally, Amina broke the seal. The letter contained only a few lines, written in shaky handwriting. Daniel, if you are reading this, I am gone. Find Amina Kato before they do. Her mother was not a thief. She was the rightful heir to something I stole from her family. The truth is hidden where the first promise was made. Trust no one, not even your brother. Amina's fingers went cold. Your father called my mother a rightful heir, she whispered. Daniel's face hardened. My father spent the last 10 years trying to tell me something about a woman named Miriam Kato. I thought she was an employee who had disappeared after stealing company documents. Amina stood so quickly that the chair scraped against the floor. My mother never stole anything. Daniel raised his hands. I believe you. Then why did your family destroy her? She demanded. Daniel stared at her, visibly shaken. What do you mean? Amina's voice trembled. The night before she died, she told me that powerful people had been searching for her for years. She said if anyone from your family ever found me, I should run. Daniel looked toward the window. Outside, one of his security men suddenly turned his head toward the road. A black motorcycle had stopped at the far end of the village. Amina noticed it too. Who are they? She whispered. Daniel's expression changed instantly. I don't know. He moved toward the door, but Amina caught his arm. You said you came to protect me. Daniel looked down at her hand, then back into her frightened eyes. I did. A loud crack echoed through the village. The motorcycle sped away. On the ground outside Amina's house lay a small wooden box, thrown through the window. Amina slowly opened it. Inside was an old gold pendant bearing the same mysterious symbol from the photograph, and beneath it, a second letter addressed not to Amina, but to Daniel Hartwell. Her hands trembled as she unfolded it. Only one sentence was written inside: if Amina ever discovers what is beneath the Hartwell estate, she will learn that the billionaire she trusts is the son of the man who betrayed her mother. Amina looked at Daniel. For the first time, she wondered whether the man standing in her house had come to save her, or finish what his family had started. Amina stared at Daniel, the letter trembling between her fingers. Your father betrayed my mother, she asked. Daniel said nothing. For several seconds, the only sound in the room was the rain striking the roof. Then he slowly shook his head. I don't know what my father did, he admitted. But I intend to find out. Amina laughed bitterly. That's convenient. You arrive with armed guards, a mysterious letter, and a family secret, and I'm supposed to trust you? Daniel looked at the old pendant on the table. No. You're supposed to trust your own instincts. If they tell you to hate me, then hate me. But don't run. Amina folded her arms. I wasn't planning to run. Daniel raised an eyebrow. Good. She pointed toward the door. Because my legs are tired. Daniel almost laughed, but the moment disappeared when his security chief, Marcus Reed, entered the room. Sir, we need to leave. Now. Daniel's expression sharpened. Why? Marcus lowered his voice. Someone searched the village records office 20 minutes ago. They were looking for Amina's birth certificate. Amina's face went pale. My birth certificate. Marcus nodded. And they weren't ordinary thieves. They knew exactly what they were looking for. Daniel turned to Amina. You have to come with me. She immediately shook her head. Absolutely not. Amina, I don't know you. You know enough to know someone is hunting you. She looked toward the window. And you know enough to know your family may be behind it. Daniel had no answer. Amina picked up the pendant and slipped it into her pocket. If I leave with you, everyone in this village will think I've been kidnapped by a billionaire. Marcus cleared his throat. Technically, sir, you are a billionaire. Amina glanced at him. Thank you. Very comforting. Before Daniel could respond, an elderly voice called from outside. Amina. It was Mama Ruth, her mother's closest friend. The old woman hurried through the doorway, breathless and soaked. She clutched a bundle of papers beneath her shawl. Your mother told me this day would come, she said. Amina froze. What day? Mama Ruth looked at Daniel and immediately stepped backward. You brought a Hartwell here. Daniel's face tightened. I need answers too. Mama Ruth ignored him and placed the papers into Amina's hands. Your mother left these with me the night before she died. She made me promise not to give them to you unless a Hartwell came looking for you. Amina unfolded the first page. It was a faded map showing the Hartwell estate, and beneath the drawing was a small handwritten message, the truth lies beneath the old rose garden. Daniel stared at the map. The old rose garden hasn't existed for 20 years. Mama Ruth looked directly at him. Exactly. Suddenly, headlights appeared through the rain. Several vehicles were approaching the village. Marcus stepped outside, then immediately returned. We're out of time. Daniel looked at Amina. You have two choices. Stay here and wait for whoever is coming, or come with me and uncover the truth before they find it. Amina looked down at her mother's handwriting. For years, she had believed her mother died poor, forgotten, and defeated. Now she realized Miriam had left behind a mystery powerful enough to frighten one of the richest families in the world. Amina lifted her eyes to Daniel. Fine. I'll go with you. Daniel nodded. Good. She grabbed her small bag. But if you try anything suspicious, I'll hit you with this. Daniel glanced at the bag. What's inside? Amina smiled. 2 dresses, 3 onions, and a cooking pot. Even Marcus struggled not to laugh. But as Amina stepped into the rain beside Daniel, neither of them noticed the man watching from inside a parked vehicle across the road. He was holding an old photograph of Miriam Kato. And beneath it was a newer photograph of Amina. The journey to the Hartwell estate began beneath a sky the color of bruised steel. Amina sat in the back of Daniel's black SUV, clutching her small bag while the village disappeared behind them. She watched the familiar huts, banana trees, and dusty paths fade into the distance. Daniel sat opposite her, unusually silent. So, Amina finally said, is being a billionaire always this quiet? Daniel looked up. Only when I'm sitting across from someone who threatens to hit me with a cooking pot. Amina smiled faintly. Good. Then you understand the arrangement. Marcus, sitting in the front passenger seat, shook his head. I've worked for Mr. Hartwell for 8 years. You're the first person who's ever negotiated with him using kitchen equipment. Amina looked out the window. Maybe that's why he needs me. By midnight, the estate gates appeared through the mist. Amina stared through the window in disbelief. The Hartwell mansion looked less like a home and more like a palace, towering stone walls, enormous windows, fountains glowing beneath white lights, and gardens stretching farther than she could see. She stepped out of the car and slowly turned in a circle. "How many people live here?" she asked. Daniel adjusted his coat. "Currently, 4. Amina's mouth fell open. "4 people need all this?" Daniel shrugged. "My father liked space." Amina glanced at the mansion. "Your father didn't like space. He liked showing off." Marcus coughed to hide a laugh. Daniel gave him a warning look. Amina almost smiled, but her expression changed when she noticed an elderly woman standing at the entrance. She was Daniel's aunt, Eleanor Hartwell, and the moment her eyes fell on Amina, the color drained from her face. By midnight, the estate gates appeared through the mist. Amina stared through the window in disbelief. The Hartwell mansion looked less like a home and more like a palace, towering stone walls, enormous windows, fountains glowing beneath white lights, and gardens stretching farther than she could see. She stepped out of the car and slowly turned in a circle. "How many people live here?" she asked. Daniel adjusted his coat. "Currently, 4. Amina's mouth fell open. "4 people need all this?" Daniel shrugged. "My father liked space." Amina glanced at the mansion. "Your father didn't like space. He liked showing off." Marcus coughed to hide a laugh. Daniel gave him a warning look. Amina almost smiled, but her expression changed when she noticed an elderly woman standing at the entrance. She was Daniel's aunt, Eleanor Hartwell, and the moment her eyes fell on Amina, the color drained from her face. "Amina Kato," Eleanor whispered. Daniel stepped forward. "Aunt Eleanor, how do you know her?" Eleanor didn't answer. Her gaze remained fixed on the pendant around Amina's neck. "Where did you get that?" Amina instinctively covered it with her hand. "It belonged to my mother." Eleanor's hands began to tremble. "Miriam gave it to you?" "Yes." Eleanor closed her eyes as though hearing a name from a painful past. Then she whispered, "Your mother should never have survived that night." Daniel stared at her. "What night?" Eleanor opened her eyes and looked directly at him. "The night your father betrayed her." Before Daniel could ask another question, Eleanor turned and walked into the mansion. "Come with me," she said. "There are things your father never wanted you to know." The old woman led them through a corridor filled with portraits of generations of Hartwells. At the end stood a locked wooden door. Eleanor produced a key from beneath her necklace and opened it. Inside was a forgotten study covered in dust. Amina's eyes immediately landed on a large painting of the Hartwell estate from decades earlier. Beneath it was a rose garden, and at its center stood a stone fountain bearing the same symbol as Amina's pendant. Daniel stepped closer. "The old rose garden." Eleanor nodded. "Your father ordered it destroyed after Miriam disappeared." Amina touched the painting. "Then why is it still here?" Eleanor looked at her with sorrow. "Because your mother hid something beneath it." Suddenly, footsteps echoed outside the study. Everyone froze. Daniel reached for his phone. Marcus quietly moved toward the door. The footsteps stopped. Then came 3 slow knocks. Eleanor's face turned white. "That's impossible," she whispered. Daniel frowned. "What's impossible?" She backed away from the door. "The person knocking is dead." The door slowly opened. A man stood on the other side. Daniel's breath caught. It was his older brother, Victor Hartwell. The problem was that Victor had supposedly died in a plane crash 6 years earlier. For several seconds, nobody moved. Victor Hartwell stood in the doorway, rainwater dripping from his black coat, his face older and thinner than the man in the family portraits. Daniel stared at him as though reality itself had betrayed him. "Victor," he whispered. Victor gave him a tired smile. "Hello, little brother." Daniel took a step forward, but Marcus immediately blocked him. "Don't," Marcus warned. Victor raised both hands. "Relax. If I wanted Daniel dead, he wouldn't have made it through the gate." Amina watched the two brothers carefully. Something about Victor frightened her, not because he looked dangerous, but because his eyes carried the same sadness she had seen in her mother's face. Eleanor covered her mouth. "You were supposed to be dead." Victor looked at her. "I was supposed to stay dead." Daniel's voice hardened. 6 years. 6 years, Victor. We buried an empty coffin because they told us there was nothing left to recover. Victor's expression darkened. There was nothing left to recover because the plane never crashed. Silence filled the room. Amina stepped forward. "Then where were you?" Victor looked at her for a long moment. "Running." "From whom?" she asked. Victor's eyes dropped to the pendant around her neck. "From the same people who have been searching for you." Daniel turned sharply toward him. "What does Amina have to do with this?" Victor walked into the study and locked the door behind him. "Everything." He reached inside his coat and placed a small metal key on the desk. "Your father discovered the truth about Miriam Kato years ago. He planned to return what belonged to her family." Amina's heart pounded. "Return what?" Victor looked at her. "The Hartwell fortune wasn't built entirely by your grandfather. A significant part of it was stolen." Amina stared at him in disbelief. Daniel shook his head. "That's impossible." Victor laughed without humor. "That's what I said." He pointed toward the painting of the rose garden. "Your grandfather and Miriam's father were business partners. Together, they built the company from nothing. But when Miriam's father died, your grandfather forged documents and claimed the entire empire. Miriam's family was left with nothing." Amina's eyes filled with tears. "My mother knew." Victor nodded. "She found proof. That's why your grandfather tried to silence her." Daniel's face went pale. "And father?" "Your father eventually discovered what had happened," Victor said. "He tried to correct it, but someone inside the family stopped him." Daniel stared at him. "Who?" Victor didn't answer immediately. Instead, he looked toward the locked door. "The person who ordered the plane crash that was supposed to kill me." Amina swallowed hard. "Who was it?" Victor finally whispered one name. "Eleanor." Amina turned toward the elderly woman. Eleanor's face crumpled. "No," Daniel said. "Aunt Eleanor would never." "I didn't order the crash," Eleanor interrupted, tears filling her eyes. "But I knew about it." Daniel stared at her in disbelief. Victor's voice softened. "She was threatened. They had her son. She was told that if she spoke, he would die." Eleanor covered her face. "I was a coward." Amina stepped closer to her. "Who threatened you?" Eleanor slowly lifted her head. "Your father's closest business partner." Daniel's jaw tightened. "Mr. Blackwell?" Eleanor nodded. "But he isn't the one you should fear." Victor reached beneath his coat and removed another photograph. It showed a younger version of Daniel standing beside his father, Victor, and a mysterious woman whose face had been scratched away. There is someone else behind all of this, Victor said. Someone who has been controlling the Hartwell family for decades. He placed the photograph in front of Amina. And tomorrow night, that person is coming to this house. Amina looked at Daniel. Daniel looked at Victor. Then the mansion lights suddenly went out. From somewhere beneath the house came the sound of a heavy metal door opening. And beneath the floorboards, someone whispered Amina's name. Years later, people would tell the story differently. Some said Amina Kato married Daniel Hartwell for his billions. Others claimed she had secretly been wealthy all along. But the truth was far more powerful. Amina had not married a billionaire because she wanted his money. She married the man who had finally chosen truth over power, and together, they exposed the betrayal that had stolen her family's legacy for generations. When the hidden documents beneath the old rose garden were finally revealed, the Hartwell empire was forced to return what had been taken. Amina stood before the world not as a poor village girl, but as a woman who had survived poverty, betrayal, fear, and the darkest secrets of one of the richest families alive. Daniel changed too. He learned that wealth could buy comfort, but it could never purchase trust. Amina taught him that courage wasn't about having nothing to fear, it was about moving forward while fear was screaming inside you. Together, they rebuilt the company on honesty and used part of the fortune to establish schools, hospitals, and businesses in Kijani village. And whenever someone asked Amina what it felt like to become one of the wealthiest women in the country, she would smile and say, "The money changed my life. But discovering who I was changed my heart." But there was one final mystery. On the evening of their wedding anniversary, Amina returned to the old rose garden alone. Beneath the fountain, where everything had begun, she discovered a tiny envelope hidden inside a stone compartment. Her name was written across it in her mother's handwriting. Amina's hands trembled as she opened it. Inside was a single sentence. "If you have found this letter, then you have discovered only half of the truth." She looked toward the dark mansion. Someone was standing behind one of the upstairs windows, watching her. And when Amina turned back toward the fountain, the mysterious symbol on her pendant began to glow beneath the moonlight. The end, or perhaps, the beginning of an even greater secret. Your turn. What do you think Amina's mother meant when she wrote, "Only half of the truth"? Was there another hidden heir? Was the Hartwell fortune hiding an even bigger secret? Or was someone from Amina's past still alive? Comment your theory below, and if you enjoyed Amina's journey from poverty to power, like, subscribe, and share this story with someone who loves emotional African family dramas, billionaire romance, secrets, betrayal, and unexpected twists. Because sometimes, the person everyone thinks has nothing, is the one who holds the greatest secret of all.